everybody. Welcome to our show. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty. Um, John, will you handle that while I do something here quickly?
Okay. Yeah, we've got a guest coming in named Art Hardy. Uh, Art's been on the show before, and we got a lot of good feedback on him coming on. The We're going to be talking about the Navajo view of the universe and pretty much everything. As you know, the meaning to life, the universe, and everything, according to Douglas Adams, is the number 42. So we're going to try to expound on that a little bit more. Stan can't be with us. He received an injury recently, and he's having to convalesce a little bit. He's got some hearing issues going on right now, so we're going to miss him. Um, Not sure if there's anything else that I can bring up at this time.
Well, today we are, our subject is the Navajo medicine man and his wisdom about being a Navajo nation leader, and also he'll speak about how our planetary systems are in alignment with the Dine way of living. So I'm looking forward to that. He should be getting on here real quickly. But as far as we've had a week, haven't we, John, with people having experiences, including Stan. Would you like to share what Stan dealt with this week a little bit? That led up
Yeah,
to
well,
issues.
without getting into too much personal stuff, he did get an injury to his ear, and he's having a difficult time hearing right now. Um, but not only that, but the other day he had a UFO sighting, and this UFO was traveling over Gallup, going toward the northeast, and it was meandering like a tadpole would swim. He watched it till it went out of sight. Later on that day, he heard a loud bang, like a big giant weight was thrown onto his trailer roof, and then running footsteps going all the way the length of his trailer. And when he ran outside, there was nothing to be seen. So that kind of shook him up and got his attention a little bit. And I'm sure with his inability to hear, that sound had to be pretty loud for him to hear it. So, Michelle, back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and our guest is backstage and he just showed up. There's some technical difficulties you have to deal with from time to time. We can make it mean something, but I would like to introduce our occurring guest, Art Hardy. Nice to have you on. I hope everything's going well with you, and our apologies for your backstage and trying to get on. Had some difficulties there, but
Yeah, no problem.
we're so glad to have you once again. The last show we had was the last podcast we did with Crossroads, and it was fabulous, and the audience was gripped. So hopefully today we can be just as informed as we were back in 2024. And I'll turn the time over to you.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone that's online and participating in today's episode. Thank you, Michelle and Jonathan, for having me online today. I really do appreciate your invitation, and I hope we have a really good, thorough discussion again today with today's topics. And I just really appreciate the both of you for what you do and what you represent. Thank you.
You're welcome, Art. So our topic today is you being the medicine man and a Navajo Nation leader, and your descriptive narrative that describes the planetary universe that relates to the Dene, which is us, Navajos, and what happens in those occurrences with the universe as we experience as Native Americans. You can expound on that if you like.
Yeah, you're talking about the recent alignment, right, of the planets that happened.
Um, Not necessarily. I think we kind of covered that in the last podcast.
Okay.
But Michelle had mentioned that we wanted to talk more about the celestial beings, and we wanted to see, or she wanted to hear more about how the Navajo culture integrates with celestial bodies, celestial beings, celestial existence throughout the universe, and how that energy it does. It's all related, and it's related because our gods, the creation, that the god, the black god, as we call him, and he is the one that ultimately he is a creator, and he's put together a very divine interconnectedness with the universe from our point of view as being human beings or five-fingered beings. Did
Okay.
you want me to keep going?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was just thinking there's so much there in what you said that it just I'm still unpacking it, as you would say. Um, but the Navajos have had a long history of contact with uh, with divine beings, in their own oral history, and that these sky people have come to them, the holy ones, to impart knowledge on how to live and how to act and how to have moral values. And that's what they were taught. So go ahead, Art.
Well, that is correct. In our creation, we go back to the story of the coyote, which is the trickster. And we've heard, at this point, I want to say that there's quite a few stories related to the trickster. I'm pretty sure it's gone globally at this point as to Navajo culture, being that we have used this internet platform, and there are numerous videos on YouTube and social media that talk about the trickster, but they also relate to the creation god, which is Hastethajin, or the Black God, as we call him. He's also called the God of Fire. Um, and so one of the main stories for the nighttime is related to the stars. So the coyote himself, being a trickster, had come upon two different gods as they were putting things together, and this is when the creation of the universe was happening. And so you have uh, the talking god, which we call in Navajo, and he had a deerskin cloth so big, and he collected from all the other gods different colored stones, and those different colored stones were placed on this deerskin. And at that point, that's when the talking god would take those colored stones, and he would place them. He was placing them intricately into the night sky, as the night sky was black and void. And so it has to do with a lot of communication with the other gods, in that the current situation at the time was creating a path for our Navajo people to follow. And as you know, John, being Navajo yourself, that's related to Hajonje, the blessing way or the good way of life. And at the time, the deities had it in their mind to create a pathway, and to show drawings throughout the night sky as to how to achieve this thing called Hajonje, or the blessing way of life. And at the time that this was happening, the coyote came upon these two gods, and he wanted to place a stone. He says, "Please, please, please, let me place a stone." They gave him a red stone, and he took that and he threw it up there into the sky. And that is what we know today as Jupiter, because it moves around through the night sky. And that was part of Coyote's trickster, was having that ability to play around with the things that he was getting involved in. So that's part of that story. The other thing was he got impatient, and during his impatience, he grabbed the deerskin and flipped up all of those stones, crystals, and they flew into the night sky. And as they landed randomly. And so at that point, the talking god, as well as the black god, had only gotten so far in their design of the night sky in creation to the Hajonja, or the blessing way. And at this point, there's only so many constellations that the Navajo people reference throughout the night sky. One of the biggest ones is going to be the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper. In the Navajo language, we call that Noho Konspakant and then Noho Konspaad, in reference to a male and a female. So one thing that's always interesting to me is that the northern star, which is Noho Konspakant, is the northern fire, the everlasting fire is what we call it. All the constellations revolve around that northern star. It doesn't matter what constellation it is, they revolve around that star. So these constellations, as what we know as the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper, they reference certain times of the season. So throughout the year, we have the 4 seasons that take place. And so for every season that we go through, we either have the male deity or the female deity represented in the night sky as the sun sets. And so during the night sky, right now during spring, you have the female, which is represented as the night sky, or as the evening becomes upon us, you see the female version, which is later on in the morning time, it'll rotate to where you see the male. And at that point, and so this is how we understand our seasons and the way that we took care of ourselves agriculturally, predating Western civilization. And so some of the stories that we're telling today, they're normally told during the winter, but for purposes of education and to keep and to help you with your TV show or your podcast, sorry, I'm willing to tell the story. A lot of people need to hear this, especially the younger generation of Native Americans that are out there. It's not so much that this Navajo culture just only directly relates to Navajo people. There's a lot of good teaching within it that can provide, as you just stated, good morals, virtuous behavior, maybe even ethics. It depends on how you relate these stories to the young children or to even to yourself, and how you can maybe hold yourself to some type of standard and have some integrity about yourself. To get more familiar with these stories, it does take a tremendous amount of time to tell the story in the way that it is meant to be told. And it's also these stories are supposed to be told during a certain time and a certain setting. But we're going to go ahead and pass all of that just to get the information out there. And that's one of the things I like about your episodes is that you give that platform that full attention that it deserves and it needs, as well as the respect. And so going back into the story itself, the Milky Way. Let's talk about the Milky Way real quick. The Milky Way, at the time, talking god and the black god, as we call him. I don't even want to call him the god of darkness. This doesn't sound right, but the black god, he ended up taking crystals and crushing them up and creating a powder. And through that powder, he expanded that powder out into the night sky, and that is what is known as the Milky Way now. But that is related to the interconnectedness of the universe, and so that comes directly back to us as a human being, as a human body. But we know that we're born of the stars, correct? We know that's true about us. We know that we do have a piece of every inch of the universe within ourselves. And so because of that, somehow, some way, through our tradition and our culture, our stories, we were able to formulate and get a good understanding in our own way, at the time, how life is all connected and how that structure has been created for us as a divine people, because now remember, Navajo people refer to themselves as Dine, which is the holy people or the holy ones, and we are stewards of this earth or stewards of this land. We go through our daily activity, but it's always in reference to Hajonje or the blessing way. Even when we rise towards the dawn in the morning, the Hogan is a really good example of that, because the Hogan is one of our traditional homes. And the Hogan, the doorway itself, it always faces the east as the sun rises. And that's where the Hajonje starts and begins. A lot of teaching goes back to we as kids were always told, get up before the sun. In the sun in Navajo, he is called Jonah A, and he's one of our gods, and sometimes we refer to him as our father. And so he's watching, he's forever watching you. So if you're sleeping in, he's definitely going to see and know that you're not doing things in accordance with the grand design that these gods had for us. So but there's consequences and ramifications for sleeping in all the time, and we won't go into that, but I want to stick to the star stories. So now let's take the Hogan again. It does have a circular type or a circular shape to it, and that's in reference to Mother Earth, because we know that the Earth is round. One thing that always boggles my mind is that how did these older Navajos, that predated science or European teaching, how did they know that the Earth was round? That's one of the things, and the reason why the Hogan was shaped the way that it was is to answer my own question, is when you look out towards the horizon and you look at the horizon, it creates a circle around you, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so through that is where the Hogan was based. And then you look at the sky during the day, and it creates a dome shape. And so that dome shape is the reference to the inside of the Hogan as it's shaped similar to a dome. And then you take the fireplace within these Hogans, the stove, they put it right directly in the center. That's a representation of the Northern Star, the North Star. And so that sits right in the middle. And again, when you walk into these homes, you come in and you go around in such a way that you're going from the east. You'll start from the east and you'll go to the south, to the west, to the north, and then back out the east again. And that is in reference to how the Big Dipper and Little Dipper revolve around the Northern Star. So we have that teaching there that shows us the correct path of Hajonje. Your mind and your thoughts, as well as your body, everything has a movement about you as a creation, and that movement is really what, for whatever reason, the Navajo people have really thought this through, and is how they created these stories and how they came up with certain ideas, and that's where we as Navajo people pride ourselves in the fact that we've researched this for many generations, many moons. That's what we have done, and we've taken that information and we've made it to a spiritual point. We've made it to a holistic point, and from those points of views, I honestly, excuse my. This is my coworker here. I'm sharing an office with him. He's leaving for the day.
I love it.
Yeah, so I'm still at work, but it's after 5, so I'm taking care of this. But anyway, so we have that whole setup there as to how we can follow this path to have a very divine life, and that's where I think the teaching of the medicine man or the medicine woman, medicine people really comes into play. We have to preserve this knowledge some way, somehow. And I found that one way to do that is through social media. One way to do that is through YouTube. And we have resources now to do this. It's been written. There's been movies done on this. There's all kinds of information out there. There's loads and loads of books at this point. Um, but it still fascinates people when I talk about it. It's very different when you're reading a page in a two-dimensional form versus someone coming at you and having a three-dimensional voice or having that that ability to ask a question and then getting an answer right away. That's where I find that being a medicine man is it makes me feel good that I have that ability to communicate with my own people and for my people. But those are very simple stories that we share. There's other stories that go more in depth and in detail into our Navajo culture. And specifically, what I'm referencing is the ceremonies that we have. There are certain ceremonies that we utilize the stars for. The crystal itself, the quartz crystal to be exact, is one of the holiest items that the Navajo people possess to this day. And we know that these crystals vibrate at a high rate, and their frequency is consistent. So in your watch, if you have a watch and there's a little quartz crystal in it, the reason why they put a quartz crystal in it is because that's a consistent vibrational frequency. And that vibration is what allows time to be kept at such a down to, I don't even want to like, it is so precise that that quartz crystal is able to keep time. And this is where we have realized that as Navajo people through our culture. And so we use that crystal in our ceremonies. One thing that it does is that vibration that comes off of it, the frequency that it creates, it affects us through and through our body. As it affects us, it helps us solidify because we are vibrating at a frequency too. Typically, we're at a low frequency. So where I'm at, sitting down, I'm somewhere around maybe 5 to 9 hertz. As soon as I stand up, it jumps anywhere from 5 to maybe 15 to 16 hertz. And so everything that we do is relative to how we communicate with the universe, how that universe communicates with us. So if you want to pray, obviously you're probably better off sitting down. A lower tone of frequency seems to have a better effect because it's calming and you're not moving around, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're able to communicate with celestial beings and bodies. And I don't mean little green men. I'm talking more of a spiritual nature. In our culture, we have ancestors that we refer to in our prayers. And those ancestors that we refer to, Dine, is part of it. It's what we call them in Navajo. You can reference them that way. That's one way to do it. And in that in your prayer, as you reference them, we're calling to our ancestors to come help us. Normally, it's in a time of need or a time of crisis. There's a lot of people that get hurt. They need healing. They have mental issues. They have physical issues. Different things that go on with the human body, and we utilize the energy of past lives, so to speak. We use that energy to heal this body. The quartz crystal, if there's enough of them, you will feel that vibration coming off of them. I don't know if you've heard stories about people going into the big crystal caves down in South America, and when they come out, they're throwing up. Their energy is completely drained. They're falling around. They're fainting. And that is the evidence of how powerful these crystals can be if you don't respect it and if you don't understand it. And so communication from where we're at, it takes a lot of practice, but it also takes the correct words to utilize this connection and how we communicate with the stars themselves. So so the yin and so the yin the so is the Navajo word for star. So the yin is a star god. So the yin the is the star god people is the English translation. And so these are the deities and the beings that we call upon, and they come down in a very focused type of energy. And you can call them a beam of light if that's what makes sense to you. But it's overall, it's just a beam of energy, and it gets very focused through these ceremonies, and that beam of energy is what helps these individuals get back to a good mental state, a good physical state. And it's in a relationship with how that person, what I would call the person that's having problems or having trouble, they have to be focused as well. If they're not focused on what they're asking for or what they're trying to conduct upon themselves, I believe, in my experience, it hasn't worked very well for those folks. And so we get back to manifestation and how your mind, the power of your mind and your thought plays a key role in the way that you can heal yourself. And we know this to be true. We know that our words have power. We know that it comes, that we can change the shape of particles with just mere reflection of our voice. And if we talk about love, we see generations of different types of like cymatic designs and other things, and going negative and talking negative, or even cussing and doing things like that. You start to see a negative effect. And prayer is no different, because prayer actually is a manifestation of its own. Now, to me, if you haven't put this together, when you speak and you're praying, what you're doing is, as I said before in one of the other podcasts, is you're hearing yourself speak. And so that power resonates back into yourself. And really what you're doing is you're manifesting the healing power of you, because you are godlike. You are part of the gods because you're part of the stars. You're part of the organization known as the universe. And that celestial body exists within all of us. It just depends on how we use it and how focused we are when we use this. So it doesn't really matter, I don't think, if you're a Native American, maybe a practicing medicine man. As long as you have that faith about your prayer, it can work for you. And so you don't need to have years and years of training to do specific things, or have that type of understanding or teaching. It's really up to you as an individual. And I think that really shows in freedom of will. Freedom of will is something that even in Christianity they talk about. You have the ability to create a hell for yourself or a heaven for yourself. In the Navajo culture, we pretty much think the same way on those same lines, although we take it more spiritually. And we look for balance, and the balance comes from your masculine side, as well as your feminine side, and every human being has that within them. Yeah, and I'm talking about like the Y chromosomes and the X chromosomes, and how you create either a male or a female. It's the same relationship, and that's what makes everything so significant, and it interconnects everything so well. How did the Navajo people know this long before Western culture had come to us to say this in a scientific way with scientific definitions? We've had stories
Yeah.
all along that told these things to us, and we relay this information orally by word of mouth. You can't go out and get a doctorate degree in what I'm talking about. That doesn't exist. But what does exist is based upon true experience and divine, I'll say divine knowledge. And it takes generation upon generation. We've had, probably literally maybe thousands of generations come through this land that we now reside upon, and that's generational knowledge. Every generation gets that knowledge, and
Yeah.
it may change.
Hey,
It may change with new information, right? But in the
yeah,
long
Art.
run, yeah,
I was going to say that one of the things that I've always understood, and kind of bring the point out, is that words have power.
yes,
And
sir.
no matter what kind of words you're using, they all have power. So that's why they say words, they say it's spelling, it's casting a spell. Um, and that's why they call it that. Um, so inadvertently, you can make spells with just words spoken aloud whether it's good or bad. If you're cussing out somebody because you don't like them, you can create some bad stuff. And likewise, if you're praying, if you have that intent of wanting to do something, you could actually create things, opportunities for yourself to earn money, to be recognized, and things like that. So it does go both ways. One of the other things that I wanted to mention, in my career early on, I had the opportunity to talk with a lot of elderly Navajos out in the field as I was working. And they would tell me that all the stars have Navajo names. And
Right.
they knew them intimately. They would say, "Oh yeah, that's that constellation," and they had Navajo words for all of them. And they would reference constellations that we couldn't see until we got telescopes in our modern science era, but they
Mhm.
knew where these constellations were. And we didn't find out till much later. Oh, there's a constellation there, but the Navajos already had a name for it, and they couldn't even see it. So that to me is kind of one of those little outstanding things that really stood out in my mind. That I kind of think that as a people, we're losing knowledge, and we're constantly losing that knowledge. But we think we're pretty sharp because we have digital watches today, and so we say, "Oh, we're at the pinnacle of civilization," whereas I think that we've lost a lot more than we've gained.
Jonathan, you bring up a good point because when I was growing up, I'm of two other tribes. I'm Pawnee and Ojibwe. And what's really interesting, my great grandfather was a warrior with the Pawnee tribe and also a chief. And he would gather, I remember this as a 5-year old, gather us around the drum. And he would pound that drum and then he would share a story, pound that drum and share another story of being a scout and being out and, riding horses and all of his stories. And Art, you said something very significant. You said we have all the books and we have all these videos and narratives out there, but what we're forgetting is to gather as people and sharing these stories. And I think we're doing that today with this media called a podcast, and it's being recorded and the gathering. And we don't have our native tools in front of us, our drums, our flutes, whatever, each tribe uses to communicate these stories. And we are an oral these stories have been passed down orally, and we have to be so specific in telling those details. And I think that's what's missing today, as Jonathan is saying, is we're missing that tool of specifics, and we're allowing artificial intelligence to solve things. And we're relying on that, where the human mind needs to feel the, like you said, the megahertz, the frequency of those healing power. AI can't heal us. It can tell us how to get there, but it can't heal us. And it's the vibration that each of us carry. Someone today, I went to a funeral, said to me, did you feel the light of that prayer, or feel the light of that message that you heard, at the funeral? And I said, yeah. And then they go, and it was just kind of an off comment, but they said, I hope they never can see my darkness. And I thought, that's an interesting thing if that's the way you look at yourself. And I made that comment. Is that the way you look at yourself? And no, not really. Then why would you say such a thing? So those kind of things, maybe he was having, or she was having, a dark moment in their lives that, they didn't want to share, but they felt it. So the intention, sometimes we address things like that in our lives. And so how do you deal with people who are going through something like that?
It depends on where they're coming from. To be honest, I do play psychologist at some point
Mm-hmm.
while I'm conducting prayer services or ceremonies. There's a lot of folks out there that are looking for direction.
Mhm.
And sometimes the folks are their own worst enemies. Such is the case when you're dealing with addiction. When you deal with addiction, uh, it's the person's mind that is playing that role of why that addiction is still there, and how it can get pretty deep. One way that I've understood prayer is, if someone is willing to help themselves, that's half the battle. I can't. To me, it's, if I was to go to pray for, let's say, John, who's having a difficult time and he doesn't want the prayer, it defeats the purpose. It's got to be John who comes over to ask for help, and John to sit there for himself, and he's got to recite some of the things that he's going through, that may be a part of that issue or whatever he may be dealing with, and then I give them I give them time to speak, but I also like to talk back to them and let them hear what I've seen so far as a human being. I've gone through trials in my life, hardships in my life, and a lot of the things that I've gone through, I'm able to use that as a tool. And I relay that information to them openly and freely. I tend to not hide anything from anyone, and that's just the way I feel. The best way to represent my people and my culture is to be very open about things. And in this day and age, one thing that I find now is that there's a lot of frauds out there, claiming to be this, claiming to be that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And because of that, we get a lot of miscommunication going. And that miscommunication, some people will actually go as far as what they've been told, and that's where we run into issues of that person having the wrong information. They're not, taking care of themselves the way that they should, et cetera, et cetera. So it actually can snowball pretty fast. And so that's where I'm at in my life is, um, I want to help. I want to help if I can. If I can't, I will try to find somebody who can help you. That is the purpose of being a medicine man.
Mhm.
It's not only to help a person find that healing or that connection within themselves, but it's also to give them direction and to show them leadership, that your life can be better, you can be better, your mind can be better. And almost everybody to this day right now is dealing with anxiety. Is that because
Mhm.
everybody's eating McDonald's? Is it a stimulant thing that has created anxiety? Some people believe that. Some people will go out of their way to make that a point and say, you drank some kind a soft drink that has zero on it, and now you're hallucinating, and it's an effect because the chemicals they put into these drinks. So that's where we run into issues. And as a medicine man now in a modern era, how do you deal with things like that come up where they
Mhm.
bring me a
Mhm.
doctor's statement and say, this is what they're telling me? How do you fix this? Is there a way to fix this? And the short answer is no. There are a lot of ways we can't fix that, because um, these prayers are old. These prayers are older, and they come from a time when things were more simplistic, and everything wasn't related to chemicalization or anything of that nature. And so we find out that like let's take uranium for an example. Uranium in our culture is a god, is one of the deities, but he's a dark god. He's a dark deity, and
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
of that, he creates sickness. And so we go back to the stories of the twin heroes, the boys that went on a expedition to eliminate all of these very bad things throughout the world, in our Navajo culture, in our stories. And so when they did that, they defeated some of these giants, as we call them,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
a lot of them are called yetis in through the Navajo language. We call them yetis. Uh, And through that, we know that particular giant brings sickness and death, cancer. And so, as we made a pact with them after they were defeated, some of these gods were defeated. Giants were defeated by our twins. They made a pact. They came up with this term, I guess, as "Do not bother me, and I will not bother you." But today you find mining going on all through federal reservations. And it's not only Navajo Nation. But imagine waking up that giant, and now the people on Earth are sick. Cancer has run rampant. Now, what if we knew this information and we took it serious as to leave that sleeping giant alone? Then we wouldn't have death running wild and rampant across the lands in the form of sickness and cancer. And so those are some of the pacts that our stories talk about that were made by our warriors, that were made at the time before Western civilization came to our area. And these stories are all related back to the stars, because the twins, their father is the sun, and as we know, the sun is the biggest star. The closest star to us is the sun. In our stories, we talk about the sun being a crystal, and that crystal rises from the east and sets in the west day after day after day. At one point in time, the deities had come up with a person, a male figure, to carry this crystal across the sky. He's tasked with this day in, day out, forever, for the rest of the time. But he made a statement. He says, "I can't do this every day. I can't do this day after day after day, because I'm not immortal, and so uh, I need something to keep me going." Oh well, we'll do something then. We'll help you with this. So every day at sunset, we'll take some lives off of the planet, which is death, and we'll rejuvenate you so that you may rise tomorrow morning. And now we get into the stories of a natural order, or natural laws, as some people call it. And that's where we have one big star going around, you know, every single day. But at the end of the day, it calls for death. It calls for energy, human energy, five-fingered being energy, so that the next day it can rise again, and so on and so forth. And so the moon has the same type of story with it. And these are some of the stories that we have to tell people as to why things are the way they are. Tell our own children, because kids, they do have a lot of questions. And they didn't have scientific answers at the time. And so they're telling them stories that make sense to them. So now they understand why the sun rises and why it sets, and why it happens day after day, how it happens day after day. And they get a good sense of there's a balance in life. There's a balance to everything. That's the role that these celestial stories, celestial bodies, the universe play in our daily life here on this planet, on Earth itself.
You know,
Yeah,
Art, go
I
ahead,
was
John.
gonna, one of the things that I was asked the other day, I'm a federal firearms instructor, and have been an adjunct instructor at Gunsight Academy. And one of the things that I was talking to three people just the other day, and they asked me, with your knowledge of training in firearms, between the three of us, there was one woman and two men. They said, which do you think would be the best student to learn how to shoot? And without even hesitating, I said, the woman. And they said, why? And, they were all joking amongst themselves. And I says, because a woman doesn't have a preconceived idea of how good a shot she is. And she doesn't brag about being raised and handling guns all her lives. So I says, she's willing to receive instruction. And as such, the psychology of that is that she will be a better student and function better. Whereas the man says, oh, I already know all this, you know, and it's often said that you cannot fill a vessel with water if it's already filled. And so you can't pour any other knowledge in there because it's too full of knowledge. And you're looking for somebody that's willing to get rid of some of that knowledge and accept what you're giving them, to understand what you're doing. And so, there is psychology involved in a lot of this. And you have to be aware of human understanding and how that relates to all of this in teaching and instructing. So that's what occurred to me when you were talking about psychology.
Mm.
You know, John and Art, it's really interesting. Art had said that the younger generation is missing this. And what I've noticed, you know, those animes, those Japanese animes that are making popular movies right now, and they're going to the big theaters, they're full of mystical knowledge, and the youth are connecting to that today because they want to know. They really do want to know. And that's why some of these movies are so popular. And they even dress up as the characters that are animes. And I took an observance. I went to go see a movie recently. And this one movie that was Tutorio, I think it was like a sequel to Tutorio. I think that's what I was asking one of the youth. I said, why are you so intrigued by that? Because of the mysticism and the stories of this character. It just takes you to another world. And I think we are missing that. And this is why we're doing this show, so we can have those teachings from your mouth as being a medicine man, from Jonathan, who's been a ranger out working in the nation, Navajo Nation. And I think we, again, are not telling the stories to our youth and to our family members. So that's what I
Yeah,
have to say.
in today's society, we have been taught, if you look at a movie today, it's action, 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 action all the way through until the end. In the old days, in the 50s, early 60s, you would actually have plot development. You would have drama. You would have all this stuff building up to maybe a gun being produced and a shot fired. But that wasn't the point of the movie. The movie was this interplay between people and the drama involved in that and the mystery. And so today's youth, they've been sold on this idea of action, action, action.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them don't have the patience to sit down and listen and be still. And so that's why they're kind of, in a sense, missing the bus when it comes to a lot of this. We become our own worst enemy, and we just don't want to take the time to listen. And when you talk about medicine men, you think, oh, I have to learn this stuff all my life to be a medicine man. And that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, that's true. And I think everyone has that ability, like I said before. We all have that ability to to heal ourselves, and it's proven science. And that's one thing that I realized uh, as I started to train and develop my skill was that it correlates to science. Science can back up what I'm talking about and what our Navajo people have been talking about for centuries. What they've already been displaying and utilizing for centuries is now backed up by science. Now, we don't have people out here studying our theories or trying to maybe debunk some of the things that we've started within our creation stories or other things, because I think that in every society there's always going to be a natural way of explaining things to everyone, and the only reason why Western society is accepted through science, is because maybe they wrote the books first, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if Native Americans wrote the books first? What if we were the ones to create our country long before the Western or the Europeans showed up? What kind of country would we live in now? Would the stories we're telling now be actually more accepted than maybe some other scientific point of view that comes from another country? Who knows? Who knows? These are all theoretical things that I'm speaking of, but it also shows the relevance in that it depends on what part of history we played our role in and how that role was played, whether it was a government that saw the need to eradicate people, or whether it's the Native Americans who fought tooth and nail to keep whatever culture they have left, whatever teachings and stories. So it still amazes me that some of the stories we have today are still in existence. And that is because there are people out there who have really taken this stuff serious, really taken our stories and our culture serious, and have hid those things away inside their minds, inside their hearts, and have carried it through all of these centuries from family member to family member. And now you have these stories still being told to this day. Maybe the variation is different. Maybe the variation is different, or the way that it's told is different from person to person, but it still has the same message that's coming out of it. We have stories of morale, or not morale, of morals. We have stories of ethics. We have stories of integrity, etc. We have all these stories that help develop and nurture a human being from a very young age to even an adult age. We're always constantly learning, and that's the thing about Navajos is we always say, in this life, you will never learn it all. You will never have all the information that you want to exist, and that's just something that's reserved for the gods. And so, when we're talking about the universe, as it's expanding right now, as we're speaking right now, we're floating through space according to science, and because of all the things that are happening there, how and why did our prayers generated from somewhere within these movements. Our prayers generated from somewhere out from the darkness, and it was brought forth to us. And as stewards of the land, we're the ones who are meant to be to take care of this land and the earth the way that it was meant to be. Those are the stories that we have. I'm sure someone out there would disagree with me on that, but this is how internally within our own Navajo culture we tell these stories to ourselves, to our children, and so on and so forth.
Well, Art, we have come on the 2-minute line, and so we want to thank you for being here. It's too bad that we can't have you on longer, but this is a show that's has to go on. But we'd love to
Sure.
Yeah,
bring
again,
you.
yeah, again, we've just barely scratched the surface,
And we
Correct.
and
Correct.
there's
exactly.
a lot of information that's still there.
So,
Correct.
just as an advertisement in behalf of Stan, was not able to get on, he's going to be doing a book signing at McMinimans and be a guest speaker at the UFO Fest up in Oregon coming up. And let me show the other one on those dates. May, as you can see in the May time, 2025 at the McMinimans Hotel Oregon UFO Fest. So take a look, and if you want to see Stan, go see him in Oregon. But again, thank you. It's been a wonderful show. Have a good day, everybody.